From Hong Kong, Chicago, and the city of Stoke-on-Trent, this is the Classic Lenses podcast.
Sorry about that. I did turn my head. I mean, I didn't think you'd hear that. Good morning, Simon. How are you today?
Yeah, I think that's not going to quite work with the way the music kicks in.
Sure it is. What are you talking about? What music? Just wait. Just stop it right now. Just stop it right now, and we'll all be quiet for a second. You can turn the music on, and we'll pretend like this never happened.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, we'll do that.
All right.
Here goes. I can't do it. No, that's it. We'll put this at the end, and we'll start that one again. I don't think we can manage this one this time. Although I'll give it a go. Let's give it a go.
Okay. All right.
Okay. My name is Simon Forster, and I'm joined by Johnny Sisson and Perry G. Hello, Johnny.
Hi, Simon. Sorry, no, I'm losing it. We're not laughing for any reason, folks, whatsoever. There's nothing funny to hear here. It's just nothing.
Yeah, this is the Classic Lenses podcast. There is nothing. There was never anything funny.
No, exactly. Good morning, all. It's bright and sunny here in Chicago, and I made a raspberry pie last night. I don't have any ginger beer this morning. So, but last night, our raspberries that run all up and down the driveway. So, I know this sounds
euphemism, is it?
No, well, yeah, I was just gonna say this sounds really appetizing. The raspberry bushes outside my driveway in Chicago. The raspberries are all ripe, so I picked a bunch of raspberries last night and made a fresh raspberry pie. So I'm all out of ginger beer right now, but I do have a fresh raspberry pie in the refrigerator.
I don't think I've ever had raspberry pie. It's more of a jam thing, really. By the way, do you have jam over there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, that's so I picked the first batch of berries. They're not all ripe yet. So the first batch here went into the pie, but the next batch is going into my raspberry jam.
Okay, and hello, Perry.
Hello.
How you doing, Perry?
I'm okay. Surviving. Yeah.
Yeah, things have been a bit tough over there from what I'm hearing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, last night things got pretty ugly. It was like a scene out of a 1980s crime movie, like those old Hong Kong triad films with just organized crime coming out and beating the crap out of everyone when they were coming home late at night. Cops just turning their back and ignoring it. I was going to go and shoot the aftermath today, but then a bunch of my friends started texting me saying like, dude, don't go. You're going to get the crap beaten out of you. And then my girlfriend told me, yeah, don't go. You're a really easy target because you're like going to be by yourself with a camera and you look really beatable, whatever that means.
Old Perry the punching bag.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, apparently I look like a really satisfying punching bag target. But yeah, apart from that, I developed a roll of C41 successfully. The last roll. Thank you. Well, I screwed up the scanning. The colors still aren't right. But I shot a roll through my X-Pen, and it turned out that mixing a fresh batch of chemicals really does do the trick. I'm actually thinking of being super wasteful and lazy about it in the future, and just using C41 almost as like one shot. And just getting the temperature of the water spot on when I mix it so that I don't have to get it back up to temperature when I'm reusing it because it's such a pain in the ass. But we've had that. We've had that conversation.
I can relate to this theory you have here, Perry.
Okay, have you done that?
No, but I like your thinking.
Yeah, it's so tempting because I mean, they come in giant bottles, right? So I've got this giant bottle under my sink that I've only used once, and then it expired after a number of rolls. I'm like, I might as well, it's technically expired anyway. As well, just one shot all of it until it's gone, and then just send everything else to the lab. But yeah, apart from C41 still sucking, so I'm gonna be gone for 2 weeks. I'm going on an epic road trip across the east coast of Canada next week, starting on Saturday. So right now I am still struggling to decide what gear to bring. but it's always a fun decision-making process. And, when I'm gone, you guys better record some good stuff, because we're going to be on the road for a while, and I intend to listen and like scream at my speakers when you say incorrect things.
Right. Well, thanks for that. And I'll just do a very brief update on what I've been up to, because we have a guest, and we don't want to keep her waiting much longer. And I've actually been out shooting the Tessar as part of my challenge, and I've been shooting it's a Tessar that I borrowed off Brian Truman of the Six Towns Darkroom. I shared some pictures with last week. And I've been shooting it with my new camera, my own Contax AX, and it's been fun. I didn't have as much time with it as I wanted to, but yeah, I've quite enjoyed shooting that lens on that camera. What the pictures are going to come out like is a whole different matter, but yeah, it was not an unpleasant experience. So things are definitely getting more positive on the 45 to 50 millimeter Tessar problem front that I have. Right. Well then, as you would have heard earlier in the particularly professional introduction that we did this week, we have a guest. And it's a guest that I first heard on the Sunny 16 podcast back in. Well, actually, no, I didn't listen to it in November 2017, because I did one of those mammoth catch-ups on a podcast run. But it was episode 75 of the Sunny 16 podcast, and it's a. Now, this is a funny one in itself, because I want to describe my guest as more of an artist than a photographer, but I know that's actually a rather controversial statement to make in its own right, because many photographers will call themselves artists, and some perhaps wouldn't, but they probably are. So perhaps we might actually explore that thought process with our guest today. But our guest is Isabel Curdes. Have I got that right, Isabel?
Yeah,
that's it. And it's actually, there's a lot we're going to talk about. So I'm going to pretty much end the introduction, my feeble introduction that I've just actually done so far, and welcome you to the show, Isabel.
Thank you very much. I feel very welcomed, despite laughter and other small things. Well, and I was actually quite comfortable waiting. I'm much better at waiting than at talking about myself. So that's a bit of a problem.
You're going to have to talk about yourself in a moment, but it's been we've had a lot of fun before we actually even got started on this podcast today. So I'm sure we're going to have a good chat. But I think for those people that have not heard you, I mean, you've been on at least 3 podcasts that I'm aware of, and because you also did the Women of Film podcast with Rachel. Of the Sunny 16 as well, and what was that other one you've been on?
That is Jon Wilkening's podcast.
That's it. So there's 3 other podcasts out there. I've listened to 2 of them, and they were both very, very interesting. But I think this will be a good time for those people that aren't familiar with your work and yourself. Perhaps if you can give an introduction about yourself, such as how you got into photography and how you pretty much got here today with the kind of work that you do now.
Yeah, gladly. How did I get into photography, and what do I do? First of all, I don't actually consider myself an artist. I thought about this, and I had that also on my website years ago. And but I consider myself as a creative person that just uses, amongst other things, photography, but also painting. I write poems. I make books, handmade books. Lots of things. Everything to express what I see and feel, or how I see the world around me and how I feel inside. So, that is the basis of my work. And I love creating. I've done that not for a long time. I only started with what you would probably consider serious photography in 2012. And I guess we are going to talk about that a bit, because when it's about lenses and cameras and things like that, that's when I got my first real camera. So no point and shoot, no auto settings. But I jumped pretty much from auto point and shoot to a Leica M. In that case, a digital one, but it was the start of everything. Suddenly, I could start creating the world as I saw it, or as I felt it, and that made a huge difference to what I'm doing today. So that was the start of it. So it's not that long ago, and it's been an interesting ride with lots of analog and digital various lenses. I tried to write a list together of all the lenses that I've tried in those years. Yeah, it's a lot.
So I'm just think about how you got to. I mean, when you say in 2012, was that when you started doing it there? Because I heard. Obviously, I've listened to you before, and it sounded as though you had a very serious career in business in some form before you started to do what you do now. Yeah. So was that in 2012? When did you have a clean break between the two, or was there an overlap?
No, that wasn't yet. That was the first break. Basically, that was when I had a burnout in 2007. That was the serious start of it all, and it was quite serious. But that got me back into photography in a way. Before that, I did snapshots and things like that, and then I started to realize that I wanted to get deeper into photography, because it gave me something. But the point and shoot obviously can't do all the things that I'm doing now with my work. So, but it took a while, because I had a job in the finance environment in a really major international company with lots of traveling, lots of overtime, though it's not considered overtime when you're a manager. So I basically didn't have any spare time. And it took me another few years before I finally made the hard cut and said, okay, I'm leaving all that behind and concentrating completely on art, photography, and everything that came with it as a major driver. But since then, I'm actually, money is always an issue. So I'm actually kind of back in the finance world, but this time with my husband's little company. So I'm doing the finances there. But that gives me, luckily, enough time to do all the other stuff on the side. So that's quite nice.
So, Isabel, I'm curious now, because looking at your work and some of your recent blog posts, I was under the impression that you shot a lot of large format. But what you just said about your first real camera being a Leica M and a digital one.
Yeah.
So in 2012, that was when the 240 came out. Is that what it was?
No, there was actually a Leica M9P.
Oh yeah, okay. So it's still an M9 model. Yeah. So what was? I mean, I'm a lover of all things Leica. What was the why was your first real camera Leica M? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, and I don't really have an answer to that. It was the first camera that I had it in my hands. I can't really remember how I ended in the Leica store. But I had it in my hands and it just made click. And I saw some images online. I should say I had a Leica, what was it called? The small digital one, Deluxe. I had a Leica Deluxe before. Yeah. So it was kind of, and I think I was thinking about upgrading. Yeah, now that I remember. I was thinking about upgrading that one. Went to the store, and then they had a Leica M9P there, and I basically fell in love. It felt right, and it was just, I looked through the rangefinder, and it was just, that's what I want.
Nice. What lens did you get it with?
At that point in time, I got the 50mm Samilux, the aspherical one.
Oh man, that is a hell of a first camera. That's awesome. Oh man.
Yeah, it was kind of like a step up from a point and shoot.
Yes.
But I tried lots of different Leica lenses. I had a 21 millimeter Super Elmar, 35 millimeter Samilux, 90 millimeter Macro Elmar. I wrote them down so that I can remember them.
Awesome.
Hector 135.
Yes.
And then I used some ZEISS 35 millimeter Biogon, a Voigtländer, Helias 12 and 15, and a Nocton, and yep.
Oh man. Okay, cool. We're definitely gonna have that conversation a little bit later on. That's like rubbing my hands with glee. Anyway.
But I don't have any of that left.
Oh.
They're all sold. I'm a buy, try, explore, experiment, and sell girl.
KARL would be proud.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's have a talk about your work and for those people listening that aren't driving in a car at the moment, I urge you to go to Isabel's website. So that's isabelcurdes.com, and that's Isabel spelt as you would expect, and Curdes is Curdes, and that's at .com, because it's just well worth taking a trip to see Isabel's gallery. And when I listened to you on Sunday 16, one of the galleries or albums that was spoken about was something called Where Shadows Walk. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, actually, that left quite a mark on me, because I think the pictures are absolutely remarkable, and they're all black and white. I think there's some toning going on in there, but are they digitally manipulated at all, or are they actually straight photos?
Shift?
Nope. The only thing that is done let's say at that point in time, I used Lightroom, I think, for the development or for the processing. All the images are done with a Hasselblad flex body. So all the manipulation with regards to depth of field is done by tilting.
Right.
Yeah.
So and it's a normal Hasselblad 80 millimeter lens. It was, and then the only thing is it's not film. That one is actually digital. That was done with the digital back on the Hasselblad.
Yeah. Well,
but all the effects it's only basically the toning and some, the standard adjustments that you would do, maybe a little contrast or whatever. But I'm not saying I'm against digital manipulations, because I have a friend who does incredible work. He's a digital artist, but it's not for me. I like to get things done, which we probably talk about later also, why I'm going away from film and why I'm also reducing my processing significantly. I like to get things done in camera.
You see, I found that fascinating there, because I looked at some of these and I was thinking, are these large format? Because
that's what I thought too.
Yeah, there's clearly some very dramatic movements in the shots. I mean, I wanted to know if they were movements versus some, as I say, some very well done digital manipulation. So I mean,
nope.
I'm where I wanted to be on these. I mean,
lucky me. It was just been Isabel, you broke off. We can't hear you anymore.
Well, there's a particular shot, and it's looking down a path. Yeah. And we've been having lots of conversations about bokeh and or as Johnny would rather call it, uftar lately, and so on. And I think these are absolutely fascinating shots, especially using the equipment that you've used there. I think the majority of these shots I think could be put into the bokeh category, but they're not. They all have something in there, whether the photograph is about something, and what's going on in the outer focus area is really enhancing the feel of the photographs as a whole.
I think that's something that I also had to find out, that I'm a fan. I love bokeh or uftar, whichever way. But I don't like it for its own sake. I tried some lenses that do that for the sake of the bokeh. I like them to be part of the story. I like the background, and background is actually, for me, it's equally important as the foreground or as the focus element. I like to have an element in focus, and I like the area around to basically complement the story, to finish the story of that element. So I'm not really good at this. Doing a shot just for the bokeh.
Yeah,
I was just looking at these, thinking too that, seeing several images that are related to each other, there's a context between the images, so that it's, sometimes a single photo of a single, object that is heavily, bokeh'd, shall we say. Sometimes that single image out of context there's not as much holding it together, but especially when there's several images together. And I think the fact that there is I feel like the way you've positioned this set of images where you have like that view down a path at both the start and the end, I mean, to me, it all holds together, that there's a context for that out of focusness, that it's like you're seeing this a space. So it's not even just the individual photo and the bokeh and the individual photos, it's the way they all work together. So it's more than the sum of the parts, right?
Yeah. And I work a lot actually in series. I also have some single images, but most of my current work is done in small stories, I call them.
Yeah.
So that's just how I like to work. Some of them might stand individually. Others, I think individually, they're not really meaningful. But when they are put together, and that's what bokeh basically does for me, it puts it together. It brings the elements together, and it adds kind of like this kind of more dreamy feel to it.
Yeah.
That feel that you mentioned. Sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
No, go right ahead, Perry.
That feel that you mentioned, I think, is really striking, because I'm looking at your pictures from Where the Shadows Walk and also Beyond Dark Walls. And the thing that strikes me is like there's a clear subject matter with the cathedral or the church in Beyond Dark Walls, whereas some of these shots in the forest in Where Shadows Walk, it's really about, I think I look at it and I'm like, I don't really know what the subject matter is, but I get the kind of feeling that the image is trying to evoke. But an interesting thing about both of those series, I think, is the way that you're sort of tilting and shifting the lens to use the depth of field to really like draw your attention and like draw your eye into the frame. And what I'm wondering is like two things. Number one, I've only ever used tilt shift lenses like once for architecture to correct like vertical perspective. So these shots you've got in these two series where the depth of field, like the plane of focus is perpendicular to the sensor rather than parallel to the sensor. I guess my question here is, number one, how do you do that? And number two, what's the thought process behind making that decision? Because like that's really distinctive looking, and like I just keep looking at these pictures going like, whoa, that's different.
Well, that's what the Hasselblad flex body could do. You can get a tilt, or if you turn the camera a swing, that goes up to, I think it was over 20 degrees. So you really get this perpendicular look by doing that. So it's a really, really extreme tilt that I use in some of the images. Like when you're in the cathedral, the last one where you probably don't see it in the small version, but when you have it larger, you see that there is a choir actually standing and singing. And that also brings me to the thought process. The whole thing was that I wanted to kind of show how the music goes through the whole building. So I didn't want anything in the top. I didn't want any pillars in focus or whatever. I wanted to have that just filled with the sound and how I felt when I heard them singing.
Oh, yeah. I see that. So
cool. I needed to have the choir in focus, and it's nice because I have the connection with the choir because we are kind of on the same level, on the same plane of focus, and then all the rest is just filled with, in this case, music. Of course, you don't know that when you haven't been there, but so there's always something in there that made me choose a certain level of tilt or swing. I say, okay, I want to have that kind of like the path that Simon mentioned in the Where Shadows Walk. There was that long, dark path in the first picture that's just leading into darkness, and then tied back with my poem at the top. I don't know if you saw that one, but it's about when you walk into the forest and you're afraid of that darkness, and suddenly when you're walking, you realize and you wake up from that reality of the darkness and get into that state of dreaming. So you don't wake up the other way around, but in my case, you wake up from reality. And for that, I needed then to change the tilt accordingly. So, but that's it's not a mathematical thing how I do my tilts. It's not about when you do landscape or architectural photography, you have to really adjust it so that it's completely precise. This is more about finding the sweet spot in a way. Now it feels right. Now on the ground glass or whatever I had on the digital back, it looked exactly the way I felt.
So I'm just looking at these photographs. There's a very distinct style. They're all tied together. I'm curious to know about what came first. Did you have a vision that you wanted to create, and you think, I need a tilt shift system, or did somehow a tilt shift system come into your life and you went out and thought, this is interesting, I think I can do this with, or is it something else again?
It is more of a tilt shift system came into my life, and I found out that is what I can do with it. I'm not really the planning type. I don't plan precisely. I should say I have an idea. I have I have a repertoire. I know how certain things, like a tilt, how it works. So what I could create with it technically. But that doesn't mean that I go out and say, I didn't go to, that is, by the way, Ely Cathedral in the UK. So I didn't go there and say, okay, I'm going to do this. Because I didn't know that there was a choir singing that morning. I didn't know that we would have a gray and rainy day, and it looked really dreary and cold and kind of rejecting from the outside. And then it was suddenly filled with that warmth of the song. That happens, and then I adjust accordingly. And on that day, luckily, I had my flex body with me. So it's nothing of that is really planned. Or the other one, Where Shadows Walk, that's actually done in Epping Forest in London. So I was walking in the UK at that time. So and it's the trigger is always how I feel about a certain scene, and then I can just hope that I have the right tools with me.
I think the cathedral shots are a great example of what you can do when the light isn't great, and you make the most of the available light that you have, and you think more creatively about how to actually use that light. Because there'll be plenty of times where somebody might turn up on that day to do some photography, and they'll think, well, what's the point in that? And they'll go home, and you stayed and you delivered something because you could see. I think it must be said. I think that if you didn't have that equipment with you, that were able to do those kind of movements and things, and it was just something that was going to give you straight shots, so to speak. I wonder if you would have had the creative desire to actually go in there and actually attempt to take some of these shots. In fact, I guess you just wouldn't take some of these shots if you didn't have that type of equipment with you. Yeah,
correct. I just simply wouldn't take them.
Yeah,
I would have taken something else probably, and I don't know what. But I'm always shooting from the moment. So something would have come up. I'm just there. I'm just waiting. Usually that something comes up, an idea, a feeling, whatever. Something flies by. Something walks by. I see a light pattern. Something happens, and then I adjust to that. So I think something else might have happened, but this particular project would not have worked. If I didn't have that, sorry.
No, sorry, go on. Go ahead.
If I hadn't had that flex body with me on that morning, that project Beyond Dark Walls, or also the other one, they would not be there. I wouldn't even have attempted it.
So it's interesting that you say that, because it reminds me of conversation we were having last week about how, some people will say the camera doesn't matter, but it really does in terms of the way that it shapes the kind of compositional elements that you're able to both see and manipulate when you're making an image, right?
Yeah, definitely. For me, it does.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm with you 100% on that. Like trying to compose with a Leica M rangefinder, it's very limiting on the kinds of things that it lets you do. But for those kinds of shooting, it's the best tool, right?
Exactly.
But, you can't do tilt shift with it.
No, I haven't found. Yeah, you could do some freelancing or something like that. But I didn't try that.
Hamish Gill of 35mmC has recently stuck a Nikon tilt shift lens onto his M10 and has been messing around with that. So I guess it is possible, but it just seems like a very strange tool to use.
And you probably, I would guess you would need, it would not have worked with the M9 because it didn't have a EVF. Yeah,
there's no live view. Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to do it on the M9.
So with my worst version, it would not have worked.
So, Isabel, I'm looking through your work. I mean, you do a lot of painting as well as photography, right?
Yeah, I do.
So one thing that you often hear people talk about is, when you're painting, you're adding whatever elements you want to your composition and your image. Whereas with photography, it's often a struggle to compose and remove the distracting elements. So I'm wondering, like, when it comes to creating an image, how you sort of experience the difference in mindset in the way that you approach creating a painting versus making a photograph, and less from a technical level and more from sort of just that the mentality of and the intention of making the image in the first place.
I don't think actually that there is a big difference for me. I think I approach them the same way. I approach them from the inside out. So what I feel, how it feels, and then I try to, of course, when you're out with the camera, you have certain limitations. But I wouldn't go. Most of my work is, for example, not done in cities because for me there is too much clutter. For me to feel good in that environment. So you will see that lots of my work is, and if I go into cities, I'll probably abstract them quite significantly, also in camera, not digitally, not afterwards in processing. I do like double exposures or just focus on small parts or ICM work or whatever, to take those distractions out of the equation. That's of course easier with painting, but painting for me is, at the moment, what I'm working with is going even more abstract. I'm trying to work in a more cubist style, for example. I don't know if you've heard of Lionel Feininger. That's more the direction I'm experimenting with. So it's more of a different direction really to it. It's an element that I can't do that well with photography. I've tried, but I like it better with painting. Or I do very abstract work that is just flowing out of the brush. So things like that. And while I can see that my photography is also in certain areas going in that direction or has been going over the last few years in that direction, to be more abstract and really focus on emotion, really focus on, not what I see, but what I feel. And with painting, it's just a step easier. It's just a little bit easier, but otherwise it's not a big difference. I basically use the same themes. There's trees in both, in photography and in painting. There is an element of calmness or stillness in both. There is not too much clutter in both. So it's kind of, I think I approach it quite similarly.
So when I looked at your Cities in the Cloud series, where you've got sort of elements of a city sort of double exposed and flipped on each other, I assumed that this was done, when I looked at the pictures, I thought they were done like either in a dark room or digitally afterwards. But you're saying these are double exposures on film? They
are not on film, but they are done with a Hasselblad. They are double exposures on a digital Hasselblad. Also on a digital back with a Hasselblad. Yes.
So you're literally just like flipping it upside down?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Which is, I can tell you, the Hasselblad is not the most, the best tool to do that with.
Yeah.
You run into small problems, but it works, as you can see. It does work.
Wait, how? Just from a tripod logistics perspective.
No tripod. Handheld.
Handheld?
Yes.
And you're not using a prism finder and cheating?
Nope.
Okay. Now that you mention it, I can see that, like, the first picture where I can't really tell what kind of building it is, but the spacing on left and right is not exactly even. So
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
They are. All of them are imperfect in a way, which for me makes them perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very sort of Japanese. What's the word?
It is.
I tried to say that when my pictures go wrong as well.
No. There's a word, the kind of Japanese mentality of, like, it's the slight imperfections that make it perfect. So if you go to a Japanese like Zen garden, you'll see, like, the perfectly swept and manicured sand, and they'll always, like, throw a random leaf in there or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's that, like, slight bit of imperfection that makes the image or the entire scene more realistic and more complete, right? And it's what's the word for that?
It gives it the soul in a way.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at your images, and we were chatting beforehand, and on your site, the images. This is a general thing. The images at the bottom of the page are generally older than the ones at the top, and you can definitely see a transition going on between your older work and your newer work, and I mean, certainly there's more of a chance of seeing something where you're being further away from your subject matter with your older work, and then the work you're doing now is very close up. You know, it's certainly in the realms of macro. And you've already, and you touched upon it as well, as in, like, and you can see it with your other stuff as well, as in, like, most of it is abstract in some way, but now it's really close up abstract. So how did that happen? How did you go make that? Why did you make that transition? And would you, or do you even know why you did that?
No, because it felt right. No, I can only say it was, for me, it was the right thing to express myself. And I can't say that tomorrow I won't go out and shoot another. Okay, I don't have a flex body anymore, but I'll have some means to still do my tilting. And if it's freelancing, then that may be it. To still do projects like Where Shadows Walk or Beyond Dark Walls, they are not that. They haven't been done that long ago, so they're still part of what I would consider my current work. But current, as a really right now, over the last few months, since I started picking up photography again, to a larger extent, I've done really close-ups because that was something I could easily do here. I'm a bit housebound at the moment. With we had some problems with our dogs and lots of things coming together, and I needed to find a way to express myself without being able to travel, for example. And that's how I got into really close-ups, and some of them are definitely closer than 1:1, or more macro than 1:1.
I mean, you're using in many cases there's an extremely shallow depth of field going on, and I'm just looking in the album now, which is red as blood, white as hope, and black as sorrow, and you've got some pictures. Are they poppies? Yeah.
That's a poppy.
That's it. I'm just looking at one shot in particular, and you can just about get part of the stamen in focus, and everything else is, you can see what's going on. You know what it's about. But it's the way that the rest of the center of the flower falls away out of focus. It's almost as if, like, it's in a milky solution. And again, is that something that it's clearly a digital shot. I'm saying that as if I know it. Okay,
it is a digital shot.
I'm glad I got that right. And I'm just wondering again, have you done anything with layers and things like that, or is this it's all in Lightroom again?
actually, these those 6 images, they are straight out of camera.
Well, so they straight JPEGs? Or,
not JPEGs, but they are raw and without any processing.
Right.
So they're just like they were in the camera.
Well, that's very interesting in itself there, because I'd imagine. I mean, I'm certainly a raw shooter, and even when a photograph comes out in raw, then I think, oh, that's worked, and I like that. I can't help but just to help it a little bit along, rather than just leave it. I can probably count on one hand how many times I've actually left a raw shot alone, and I can see now if I'd actually taken that shot myself. And let's say I was there and everything was exactly the same. I know I would have been tempted to have done something, whether I needed to or not. And then clearly there was no need to do anything here. And I'll be there thinking, perhaps I might want to put a bit more contrast in it, or just deepen the blacks, or something like that, which is just my normal way of doing it. But you've had the self-control to think, I like that, that works for me, and that's how it's going to stay. And I admire that.
Thank you.
Guys, have you any comments on that?
Wabi sabi.
Yes. That's one of them.
Sorry, that's the Japanese term I was looking for earlier. I realized that made no sense to you guys out of context.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Isabel, the photos that you've got where the series called With All Senses, this is kind of interesting to me, because on their own, the photos don't really make that much sense. It's like, oh, it's a picture of a dog. But when you have the title and then, like the picture of like the nose, the eyes, and the ears, like that makes total sense, right? It's a picture of all a series of the dog's, sensory functions, I guess. What I'm wondering is, like, when you add something like a title or a poem or some text to tie together the series of images, do you find that that's essential to like the viewer or to your creative process, or does that come afterwards? Because like I don't ever put titles on my work. But only recently, partly because of Johnny, actually, I've started taking some of my X-Pan photos and putting them in triptychs. Yeah. So that they'll fit the Instagram format. And I'm finding like this, and it's annoying, right? And I'm finding that this whole process of finding the images that will work together to tell a series as a group rather than as individual pictures is kind of a cool experience. And I'm wondering sort of what your thoughts are on that, and also with the addition of the text.
For me, a lot of my recent projects, they originated from triptychs. So you're going the right way. I started because I wanted to explore an object or a situation or just something from different angles. And that's how I started doing more and more triptychs. I thought that one straight on shot, that wasn't enough for me to explain all the facets, basically, of something. So I started pretty early. It was probably the first ones I already did, also in 2013 or so, with triptychs. And when you have a triptych, for me to put it together, a title was always there. There was a title. I never had to really think about the title. It was there when I had the work finished. There was also a title. When it wasn't there from the beginning, when I shot the images, it came when I put them together and picked the ones that I really wanted to have together in the triptych. And there was somehow always a title. With the poems, it's a bit different. Sometimes the poem is first, and sometimes the images are first, and the poem comes after. And sometimes the poem just comes up when I work on the images or when I create them. So that's a bit different. But with the title, yeah, it was just there when it was done. There was also a title. And for me, it makes sense to have that title. But I'm doing that for me. I'm not doing that because I think someone might want to have a title. In the beginning, each individual image had a title. I've given up on that one long ago because that.
Okay, we just had a little technical glitch there and lost Isabel's audio, but I think we're all back. Is that right?
Yep, I'm back.
Okay, perfect. So we were talking about triptychs and your addition of titles as something that you do for yourself and not so much for necessarily for the viewer.
Yeah, correct.
So just to wrap up that line of thinking, when you're making these images, whether it's painting or photography, are you trying to get your viewer to feel the exact same thing as you?
No.
Or are you trying to leave it up to interpretation?
Yeah, I leave it up to them. For me, I think it's nice when they can see what I felt or can feel what I felt. But I'm very open to any form of interpretation as long as I can get someone to feel something. I had, for example, an interesting discussion with someone about my the one gallery that's called Transcending, where for me, I call it the story of a beautiful death. And he actually told me, for him, it felt more like a birth. So exactly the opposite. But we knew both where we were coming from when we discussed it. And I could see his point. I could see why he would feel that, because there is a certain element of rebirth or of transition in both ways. So that was quite interesting. And I was really happy that he just told me. So the most important thing for me is that there is a feeling on the other side, that someone can feel something when they look at it.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting, because when you were talking about the picture in the church with the choir, and how for you that was so almost showcasing the way that sound was reverberating through the space, I never would have made that connection.
No.
Unless you, without you saying that. But like when I look at that image, there's definitely like a feel to the shot. And I think that's just always a really interesting, well, not so much a tension, but a thought process when you're creating an image. Because like for me, I do mostly street photography. And a lot of the times when I'm creating an image and composing, there's a specific story that I'm trying to tell with the way that I'm putting together the composition. And it's like when people don't get that from the image, or especially when they do get that from the image, like I get an extreme sense of satisfaction. But it's really interesting to see that other approach where it's like, I'm just going to put this image out there. And then, as long as it makes you look at it for a while and like have some kind of emotional bond and reaction, if it's totally different from the one that you have as an artist, that's kind of okay.
Yeah. I think it's because I don't create for anyone else but for me. So I like to share, and I love the feedback, and I would be lying if it wasn't nice. But on the other hand, it's not. I tried the other way around, but it just doesn't work for me, because then I cannot get myself and my feelings into my images.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, to me, that's what I've been really just kind of quietly going through your images, and no, it really comes through, and I think that's, to me, that's what's successful about them in the most, is that it feels like it's a personal vision that you're working on trying to create, and that titles, they mean something probably more to you necessarily than they will to the viewer, but they let the viewer kind of find their own pathway in based on that, but you bring your own thing to it, right? But I mean, the thing that I go back to is, I guess, I appreciate, I guess, photographs or artwork where the creator kind of doesn't give a shit. who else gets it? And I mean and I mean that in the best possible way, because you're gonna, if you have anybody else's kind of agendas or whatever's in mind, right? I mean, it's like you have to get to like the core of what it is that you're trying to do, and that's purely yours. It doesn't belong to anyone else. And to me, I really like work like that, where I know that like you're never going to get it as the viewer 100%, but that's great. That's like the mystery of it, is it's coming from someone else's mind and psyche and feelings and emotions.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a little you're offering a little piece of your soul, but
totally, yeah.
the other one can take it or leave it. And
Sure.
I don't mind. And if they say, "Oh, I don't like that at all. I don't understand abstract work at all." You're fine. That's okay.
Right.
I understand that. I don't understand other work. That's okay.
Yeah. So I like the fact that you say that you're making it for yourself and you're sharing it, and it's great if other people get some things out of it. But I love work that is really sort of clearly made by the maker to accomplish a vision that they have of their own. I mean, to me, I think that's where great work comes from. It has to be really true to the person who's making it, and it feels that way to me.
Thank you.
Oh.
Okay. I want to move the conversation on a little bit now to pretty much how the reason for how this interview has come about, because I follow you on Twitter, and I think it was about 2 weeks ago you put an announcement out there that shocked a lot of people. A lot of people were very, very polite, I think, and because it was a case of you said something that is not what a lot of people would want to hear, and that was that you had disposed of all, I'm not sure if it actually really is all, but I think that's what you'd said, all of your film equipment, cameras, I should say, and you're going to concentrate on digital. And so I'd like to hear how you came to make that decision, although I also have to say, after listening to some of the things you've said along the way in our chat, I think I do actually understand you a little bit better now than I did when I first saw that, because it did actually come as a bit of a shock, because you do try things and you move on. And I've got nothing. I've not really heard much to say that you've actually missed anything that's gone. So so before I try and put more words into your mouth, perhaps you might want to explain, how you got to that point.
Yeah, also for me, it was a matter of that I noticed that I did not create as much work anymore as I wanted to create. I did not take as many photos anymore. Of course, I had also more on the painting side at the moment, and there were a lot of other things going on. But I noticed that I did not enjoy photography the same way anymore than I did in the past. And that usually for me is a sign that something needs to change. There is on my blog, you probably also read, there's a long list of things that I listed why I actually left film behind. But the most, if I also relating to our podcast today, the most important ones for me were that I noticed that it's not the camera that made my images. It doesn't matter whether it's a film Hasselblad or a digital Hasselblad bag, or whether it's a 4x5 camera or was an 8x10 camera. The camera was not the driving factor. The driving factor for me, what helped me transfer my vision into an image was the lens. So I wanted to make it easier on myself, because the time that I spent in the darkroom processing film, that was time I could not spend outside taking images and creating work. And that was time I was really missing. That was time that it was really fun and it was really exciting to develop film in the beginning, to do my first black and white film, to do my first E6 slide development. It was exciting. It gave me lots of pleasure. But in the end, it got in the way of what I wanted to really do, and that is make images, take photos. Because there's a limited amount of time. And then comes another part of me. I'm a minimalist at heart. That's also where I have this buy and sell mentality. I move on, I move to a new thing, and I need to basically get rid of the rest. Otherwise, my brain gets on overload, then I can't create anything anymore. So I actually had too much gear, and I could not focus on what I really wanted to create. And the third part, the third really important area is that with going more and more abstract, also more and more into the also some of the recent projects like Melancholy, there is a lot of melancholy. There is a lot of double exposures and things like that. It is actually easier to see the image on the back of the camera when you take it. When you've just taken it. And with film, I always had this, that I had the feeling either I miss the opportunity because maybe that shot went wrong, maybe I didn't get it exactly right, maybe. And with film, I could not be 100% sure until I had it developed. And with digital, I can see, did I get it? Did I miss that opportunity? Yes or no? And I cannot, as my photography comes from inside, I cannot get into the same mood in the same situation ever again. I can't recreate that. I can't just wait for another sunrise. It's not the same because I won't be the same. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Completely. Yeah, it really does.
And that's why I left film and went all the way to digital again, except for lenses.
I was thinking, do I insert? Oops, somebody's ringing me. Sorry about that. I was just thinking to myself when you said about it's all about the lenses. I was thinking, do I insert a piece of music into the podcast here? Yes, you're welcome to the show, Isabel. Yes, that's the kind of thing we like to hear. But it's one thing I just want to go back to though on your decision. You say it's not about the camera, it's about the lens and so on. There's one piece that's not really touched upon. Yes, I totally get where you're coming from, and I'm not trying to talk you out of this or anything like that. You know,
you couldn't anyway.
No, exactly, precisely. But it's not so much about the equipment, but about film. The look and the feel of film. Now it could well be, and it sounds like it. Well, you've done it. You know what film will do for you, and. I'm doing it again. I'm putting words in your mouth. Don't
worry.
Yeah.
I'll correct you if they're not right.
At times, were there in the same way as you go into your photography and you know pretty much what you're trying to create. Did you go into film photography and yes, you would use a specific lens or a specific camera body to do that might deliver something there, but were you also choosing the type of film and the kind of processing that you were doing also to give you the look that you were after? And would you have, with hindsight, could you have done the same with digital?
I chose the film and also the processing that I did to accompany or to get the look that I wanted. And for me, it's also, when I look at my film images, I like those film images best that are done, and that's exactly against what most like, that are done with low grain, as a really basically no grain. So I was using Pen F, for example, in film for black and white, or the Delta films from Ilford, because they gave me not that big grain that Tri-X also has, but the smooth one. And I processed or developed them then in Perceptol to make it even smoother. And I liked the slide film because there was hardly any grain. It was really smooth. So could I have done some of my images also digitally? Yes, I guess so. Would I say the same thing if I had chosen something like Tri-X as my preferred one? No, I still think you can see a difference between a digital file that is done like Tri-X and a real Tri-X shot.
Totally.
But that wasn't my style. My style is anyway dreamy and soft and creamy, and I get that with digital as much as I can get that with film. I know that now.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me, because that's what I was noticing going through your work as well, is that it's a great example of it. Just pick the right tool for what you want to do. I mean, and this looks like the right tool, because even the work that is film, like you're saying, it doesn't have I would almost call a characteristically analog look to it. You know, it doesn't, like, that's not the purpose behind. It's not like gritty street shots where
No, exactly.
You want film grain there because that it just fits the subject. This totally the processes you're using really fit your vision, and it doesn't really matter if they're film or digital or whatever. But I mean, to me, it makes way more sense that you would do this work digitally because, like you said, it's about capturing it in camera in the moment, and you can actually see what you're doing on digital. You don't have to wait. And did I get it right? Did I not get it right? I mean, you can judge your depth of field in real time versus you can't really do that on film because you just can't. Yeah. So to me, I don't see why there's any difference whether it's an analog based work or digital work in this case, because it's not, the analog isn't really adding that thing to it that people think analog has to add to everything. No,
at least not for that type. I don't think anyone would really see a difference between the transcending gallery or the story that was done with film to whatever elusive dance or red as blood. I don't think you can really tell because they're both smooth. They're as smooth as possible. The colors are bright and it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And what you said earlier about double exposures, I mean, it totally makes sense. Yeah. I'm looking at some of your memories of ghost pictures of this like naked guy in the forest.
Yep.
And the placement of like his head relative to the branches. There's like a moon right in the middle of his chest in one of the images. There's like the placement of his ass in one of the pictures. You wouldn't be able to do that precisely, right? And you don't want like, a tree growing out of the wrong place.
Yeah, very true.
So Isabel, you mentioned that you started with Leica M. Somewhere along the way, there was a Hasselblad with a digital back. Can you just run us through like that gear evolution up until what you have kept now?
Yeah, gladly, but that will be a long one. Let's start just briefly with the cameras. So I started with the Leica M9P. I also then in 2013, end of 2013, beginning 2014, I got a Hasselblad 903 SWC with a 38mm Biogon.
Oh, nice.
I also don't have that anymore. I had a Hasselblad 501. I had a Hasselblad 503. Figured out that for the lenses that I wanted to use, I needed a Hasselblad 2000 FCW, or at least a Hasselblad 2000 in whichever form, which I got, which was also my last Hasselblad that I had. I had the Hasselblad Flex Body. Lenses for Hasselblad, I used the ZEISS Distagon 60mm 3.5, the Planar 80mm 2.8, the Macro Planar 120mm, the Sona 150 2.8, the Distagon 50mm 2.8, and the Planar 110 f2.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So, which then brought me to the cameras that I was using kind of in parallel at that Hasselblad time. I had a Rolleiflex and a Rolleicord for a while. And then I got a 4x5 camera. I had an Arca Swiss 4x5 camera and also an Intrepid at one point in time and a Chamonix. And lenses, that's a bit interesting. I have an interesting mix, but most of them are actually soft-focused ones. And I used also some no-name ones, nameless Petzval and an old meniscus lens, so 100-plus years old. I also had a Rodenstock Grandagon, a Schneider Kreuznach Xena 150mm 4.5, a Meyer Görlitz Trioplan, Wollensack Verito, Herr Magis Eidoskop, Kodak Aero Ektar, Taylor Hobson Anastigmat 165mm f2.5, Taylor Hobson soft focus portrait lens 13-inch and the 16-inch. No, what is it? 12-inch and 16-inch. And the Cooke, the new Cooke one that they made on basis of the what's that one called? Also this Cooke PS945, the 229 millimeter. There's a modern soft focus one. They made it on basis of another old soft focus lens. I can't remember the name right now. So lots of different things there. And that leaves the ones that I keep at the moment. That's actually an 80 millimeter 1.9 Mamiya. And then I have
nice.
Then I have 3 Pentax lenses. The 105 2.4, the 120 f4 soft focus, and the 165 2.8. And then I was going
to say, Isabel, we need to stop the flow of lenses here because we can't cope with it. I mean, that's an incredible array of lenses that you've had and used and sold again. and sold again.
Yes.
As Jon said earlier, KARL would have been proud of you. Yeah. I do want to talk about the lenses you have now, and without. I mean, it's just to pace the conversation. How many lenses do you have in your collection at the moment? Well, how many lenses do you have at the moment?
Let me think. I have those 3 Pentax lenses, the Mamiya. Then I have a Lomo, one of these projection lenses. And then I'm experimenting with my own homemade, but those are basically the ones that I'm keeping.
Okay.
Oh, so I still have the Hermagis idoscope that I think I might actually adapt to the Fuji camera that I have.
Right.
So, what camera are you using them on?
The GFX, Fuji GFX.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I needed to have one with a relatively large sensor.
Because there's a lot of 645 lenses there.
Yeah.
And are you using? Are you still using shift? Have you got any shift adapters? Is that something you want to do again, or is that another thing you've moved on from?
I'm at the moment. I'm kind of building my own for freelancing. So I don't have one right now, but I'm doing it freelancing with just basically a cloth in between to get some of the light blocked out. Which works quite nicely because most of these lenses, they have the right distance from the film plane, so I have quite a bit of space to maneuver.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're doing there. So using a cloth, because what some people might do in the past would be to still do, to get some like rubber tube and things like that. But I mean, you just come up with something that just anyone can do because not everybody's got access to the correct diameter of rubber tube and so on. But we've all got access to cloths and stuff, and it's just especially if it can be relatively dark, and it doesn't actually have to be light tight, does it? Because sometimes those bits of light that come in add to the picture as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's not about perfection. The imperfect is the perfect.
So which was the lens you used last that you were happy with the results that it gave you?
I think those last 4 are really the ones I'm happy with. And before that, I was really, really happy and using for a long time my 110 millimeter Hasselblad Plana. That's a great lens. It that one was just, it just is nice to sell because it finances a lot of other things.
Yeah. Can I back you up a little bit, Isabel? Because a couple episodes ago, people were giving me a bit of grief for using expensive lenses, and now this is like, yes, this is right up my alley. Okay, I want to ask you about two lenses in particular. The Cooke PS945.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of lens that like you'd find among collectors' homes here in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of lens I think is really interesting. This one and the Hermagis idoscope.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in addition to that, I'm really happy that we have you on like audio record pronouncing all of those German names correctly.
I was taking notes.
You mean the Maya Görlitz trio plan?
Yeah, exactly. And so that we can come back.
Yeah, and the place where Schneiders are made as well. That was another.
Kreuznach.
Exactly.
There you
go. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, these large format, like 4x5 soft focus lenses, are super interesting to me because it is no secret that I have like a certain level of disdain for 35 millimeter soft focus lenses, such as the Leica Thambar.
Mm-hmm.
But on large format, for portraiture at least, when you have the soft focus lenses, like because the details are still retained, and the glow is not so unpleasantly in your face, I really like the look of these lenses. And I was wondering, like, what were you using the soft focus effect for?
You have, for example, when you look at my galleries, beyond the veil, there's one with these allium flowers, and there's also some other flowers. That was done with the Cooke PS945.
And which camera were you using for that?
That was, I think it was the Arca Swiss.
Right, so they are large format photos, yeah.
Yeah, these are 4x5. Yeah, those are 4x5 film.
Yeah, and this is like exactly the look I'm talking about because you have that soft glowiness, but it's not at the expense of the detail or that large format like pop. So you really do get that like wonderful 3D effect with all the glowiness and the bokeh together, and I think it's just such a wonderful, wonderful look.
I think it's because it's more kind of superimposed. There is this glowy part, and then there is actually a sharp part on top. I really did lots of research into soft focus lenses because I really absolutely enjoy the look, but some of them are just over the top. You don't see
like
anything anymore. It's just nice, but that's not the look I want.
And the one which is kind of like a close-up of these flowers where it's like a semicircle on the right-hand side of the frame, I think that demonstrates the look that you're describing like absolutely perfectly. And I really think that this is the right medium for using this kind of lens and not a smaller format because you're going to get that over the top, like someone smeared Vaseline all over your image,
Yeah, and it is just not the same. There is a place for Vaseline, but yeah.
Johnny, that's your cue, right?
What? Why is everybody turned to me when the subject becomes Vaseline? Come on. That's not fair.
Well, Vaseline aside, I think that these photos, again, those people that think that flower photographs are in some way not worthy, should take a look at these because these are just pieces of art. There's no two ways about it. They're incredibly well thought through. There are things going on in these images which, frankly, I don't understand what's going on. I mean, I'm looking at one, and I mean these alliums, they look like trees. And I'm familiar with the plant, and it's a beautiful flower. They've just gone out now. I think they're finished now, haven't they? But
unfortunately.
But some of these, because I just want to go out now and take them. But some of these shots look like they almost have like light leaks going on with them. But
they are light leaks. Those are light leaks that are created in camera. The first one was actually a mistake. But I liked the look so much that I recreated that mistake.
Right.
So that's the film holder not getting right into the corner when you put it in, when you take the 4x5. So the first one there was the dark slide wasn't really closing correctly. So it left the corner open for additional light. And I like that so much that for the next ones I just recreated it.
the look is unique, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm glad you've explained that. Because I was thinking, if there's a series of photographs there, that I was thinking, well, how does she do that? These are the ones when that I was struggling with most, because knowing, especially when I know that you take these pictures straight, and you're not adding things in layers and things like that. Because these absolutely look like they could have been done that way, but then when
nope.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. I'm so happy the 4x5 as well.
Yeah, there is a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
There is a place for everything. Sorry?
Did you get rid of that Cooke Cooke PS945? Oh man, I'm looking at pictures from that lens right now, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's so stunning.
Yeah. But you can't. So that is really a lens, I think, that needs to be used on 4x5. When you use it on anything smaller, whether it's digital or whatsoever, it loses some of this. It really needs that. It needs that big film.
Yeah, totally. And they don't make 4x5 focal reducers. Oh man. Hey, the medium format lenses, the Pentax 105 2.4.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking for that right now here in Hong Kong. It's in like super high demand. And I'm wondering what between that and the Mamiya 81.9, which I also have, sweet lens. What do you find yourself using them for these days? Everything.
These two are my standard lenses. These are my go-to lenses. What I like about the 80 millimeter is that close-up work is actually quite easy with that. The kind of close-up work that I do. So that works really well for me. And I, as you probably could tell, I love my shallow depth of field, my fast lenses.
Yeah.
So but these are my standard lenses, 80 millimeter and the 105.
Yeah, because I've had that lens for a while now, and I haven't really used it. But it's living on a Mamiya 645 body, and I bought it for, I think, like that reason, that it's the fastest medium. I think it's the fastest medium format lens.
Yeah, it is
out there, right? That's not like
the real medium format, if you don't count these projector lenses or whatsoever that they come.
Yeah. I mean, like sort of native
strange ones. Yeah, but it's the native one. Yeah.
And you just mentioned projection lenses there. Which lenses are you using, or projection lens that you're using?
I just got a 110 Lomo lens, the Russian one, f2, I think. That's the first one, but I got it really cheap. I don't know, it was like $20 or something like that. So I thought, okay, I can give that a try. And if I don't like it, I'll just take it apart, because as I said, I'm working on my own little minimum lens attachment or pre-lens or whatever you call them. Some of my recent work that was done using my own little extra lens on top to get closer and create a certain look.
So you're using a lens, lens body, and then you're adding another lens at the front or the back of it.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, correct. I have some just glass elements as a lens elements that I mix and match together to create certain looks. Yeah.
So that's all. I was going to say that's effectively like using a lens element as almost like a filter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this what we're seeing in some of the more recent, like super close-up images of, like, I can't even tell if it's hair or like a dandelion or something?
The last one, Dreams of Wings, that's actually feathers.
Yeah. Feathers. Okay. So that explains, because I was looking at these pictures thinking, like, there's some interesting, like, weird aberrations going on here, and I cannot recognize what the hell this is, but it looks super cool. So this is like you taking random elements of lenses and just like...
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. So what are you mounting them on? Do you have like a helicoid that you're just sticking them into?
I also have helicoids, of course, but to put them on the top, I found that actually the Lee filter system is a really interesting basis, because I can move it inside, so I can the center point where the point of focus, I can move that. That's something that I didn't like about some of the Petzval, for example, that yes, it was in the center, but maybe I didn't want it in the center. So now I can actually move that point a bit around and cause some interesting aberrations and things like that. And then my husband, he prints kind of like lens boards for me on a 3D printer, and I can just insert them.
Okay, so hold on. I have a Lee filter system, and I'm trying to understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
So you're putting the lens on like 3D printed boards that go into the areas where you would slide the filters.
Yeah, correct.
And then you're using the like slots in the filter system to like arrange the elements in different configurations.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah. That's
how do you decide how to like? Do you just mix and match and see what it looks like, or are you like looking at a Cooke triplet and then deciding I'm going to switch this element out?
Usually I just mix and match and see what comes out. I have actually looked at, for example, funny enough that you say the last one I looked at was the Cooke triplet. But that's I'm not there yet. Let's just say. But at the moment I just use what I can find, and that can be anything. That can be my reading glasses or whatever, and just see how it looks if I combine that.
Does it only work for super close-up stuff, or are you able to get anywhere near infinity on any of these weird configurations?
I have put together one that works on infinity. Then I don't use a normal lens. For these ones, I use a normal lens in between, for example, the Mamiya, and then put it on top to get closer. But if I just skip the Mamiya and just use, for example, an extension tube and just mount the leaf filter system on the extension tube, I can actually get to infinity and beyond.
Nice.
But that's a very then you're entering the realm of really that's meniscus like. There is lots of aberrations going on. I can get some of them out because I've been reading a lot on optics and how they work together and how you should turn them around and things like that. But it depends, of course, on what you want to use it for. And I've used it also just on the camera with Infinity.
The amazing thing about this is the kind of thing that you're describing. I love doing this kind of stuff, but I call it just dicking around. I never actually do anything of substance with it. But you're taking like what I would consider, epic dicking around with lenses and actually making art with it.
Well, I guess we have the title for today's podcast.
No, but you're actually making art with, something that I think is inherently super fun for a lens nerd, but it literally has never occurred to me to actually try to take pictures that I would, consider actual images with it. Oh, that's so cool. I'm just in awe right now.
I think it's hard to know where to go next. Really, on this. It's. I'm just. It's one of those episodes where I'm just very, very happy to just sit back and listen. And I think those people that are listening in the cars, really, you got to, when you get home, go to isabelcurdes.com, look at the pictures, because they're fantastic, absolutely beautiful, and hearing how they're made is, sometimes when you don't understand how a photograph's made, and somebody tells you, and I think, oh, the light goes on, and you think, yeah, I can do that, and I'm hearing about how you're doing this, and I'm thinking, I still don't know how to make these photographs, and I never will, and that's absolutely fine, and I might do something similar in the future, through the inspiration that you've given me here, and I will then, I'm not certainly going to be as anywhere near as accomplished as these photographs, but certainly the photographs that if they ever see the light of day, using some of the methods you've done here, they will not be replicable.
Nope, exactly.
And that's what makes these photographs absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that's something, actually, it's not that anyone else could even try and do that, because you don't know some of my lenses that I use for that, they are actually splintered and everything. So, but it's also that I couldn't do it tomorrow. I could not replicate my own work tomorrow, and I know how I did it.
Yeah.
They are really a thing of that moment. And that's why I like using these actually on these things like the feathers or melancholy. That's a what's it called? Now I can only think of the.
Is it
it
looks like chive.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a chive blossom, half gone already, and it was just lying on the floor, and I picked it up and I took it for pictures, and then it makes sense to use something that is also broken in a way. So there is a lot going on that you will not see, and that nobody needs to actually know to either like or don't like the images. Yeah. It's I know how I did them, and I gladly share how I did them. It's not a secret or anything, but it's not something that I could not replicate them.
The other thing here, again, these photos we're now looking at with the melancholy shots with the dead chive. I've got loads of dead chives in our garden, and they were once quite vibrant. Nothing actually went wrong with them. They're just out now. They're finished. But the thing is, apart from the fact I'm going to go out there later and try and do something, the other part is I would look at them and think, well, can't do anything with those now, and I'd look at something else in the garden. Their period of interestingness has gone, and you've proven that there's things that have gone past their best, if you like. If you look at things in a conventional sense, it's not true. Just about anything that has lived has got, even at whatever stage of decay that it's in, it has the potential of being beautiful, and it's just seeing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, beauty. One thing I've said quite a bit, right, is like beauty on the surface is something that people always go after sort of in early stages of photography. But after a while, that does get a little bit boring and stale. And it's finding, compelling imagery and emotional resonance in not just your typical pretty images. That's so interesting. And I think, Isabel, like, that's what makes your work so interesting. It's not typical. You're doing things that are very dark in some ways, but also like really stunning. And it's just like a nice, unique expression of yourself as an artist. Although I am worried that you've now sent Simon down a really dark turn with his photography. So his beautiful flower pictures are going to turn into like decaying chives in his garden with like rotten squirrels.
They'll be scaring small children with them. I'm going to ask him for a friend. How did you like these photographs? Because the lighting is also very, very special.
How do I light them?
Yeah.
These are just lit by sunlight. That's just a window. I did them here in the house in front of the window.
Wow. There you go. Yeah. How easy is that? Just everybody, just look at these photos, put them in the windowsill, and you can take these photographs just the same. Oh my word!
Stuff, yeah. Just quickly back on the subject of putting random lens elements together. Johnny often has a theory that I feel like I don't want to say Meyer optic now because I'm going to pronounce it poorly. But the Prima plan, Johnny has often said that lens seems to him like the designers just slapped a bunch of random elements together. So I'm going to issue a challenge to you guys. Chuck a bunch of random lens elements together. See if you can replicate the look of the Prima plan.
Well, I'm definitely going to do something like this. But I mean, I come across lenses which are pretty much only fit for the bin.
They are perfect,
and that's it, because it doesn't matter if it's if it was originally from anything special in the slightest. It just doesn't matter. It's an element. It's going to curve light in a peculiar way, and it's going to be different in which direction that you're going to hold it. And then if you pull another element out, it's going to do something different again. And then it's finding something and think, oh, I can work with this, and then you go out and make it work, which is exactly what you've been doing in all of your work. You've had I mean, it's a great advert for those people out there that want to buy equipment. It's because you cannot say it's not about the gear, because your shots are. What's the phrase? They're actually, in many cases, they're inspired by the gear, because you've learned how to use a particular piece of equipment, whether it be the lens or how you use shift and tilt and things like that. You've seen how these things work, and you think, I know how I can actually use that to its best effect.
Yeah.
So everybody, go out and buy more lenses and more gear.
I've already decided what I'm going to do, and I'm totally inspired right now, Isabel. I'm going to take 2 dead Tessars.
Tessars!
I'm going to stack them, one from a Super Iconta and one from, I'll find another one. I'm going to stack them back to back and make like a symmetrical dead Tessar, just to show Simon. Even dead and stacked back to back, you can get good results.
That could be that would suit me nicely. Yeah. The best Tessar is a dead Tessar. Yeah, I mean that's quite literally.
Hey, Isabel, I have one question. Sort of early on in your photography, on the gear. Why did you ditch the Leica, and what lens was your favorite, or which one do you miss the most from that system?
I think in a way I ditched it because it was too perfect.
Ooh.
The lenses, they highly corrected and everything, but I found myself drawn to a different type of I found myself drawn to imperfections, and those Leica lenses, they didn't have any.
Huh. Yeah.
And I think that was because they are wonderful lenses, all of them. And
that totally makes sense.
The one I miss most is probably the 50mm Summilux, just because 50mm is a really, that's how my eyes work. And you can also see with my recent ones, I'm going basically comparable on 35mm from 50 to longer, but I don't have really anything wider than that. So that kind of reflects how I like to look. So that was, and funny enough, the Vogtländer Nocton I also really liked.
Which one? The 35?
That was the 35 1 point. Was it 35 1 point?
It's a 2. Oh, the 1.2. Oh, okay. That makes that makes sense. I hate the 35 1.4 Nocton. By the way, it's just like it's a lens that drives me nuts. But what you say about Leica lenses totally makes sense, because. Yeah, I often find that they're boring. Yeah. Because they're like stale, they're sharp. Sometimes they're a little bit harsh.
You know what you get?
Yeah. Although there are a few exceptions, right? Like the I don't know if you ever got a chance to try the 50mm f1.0 Noctilux.
No. That's one of those I never got a chance to try.
Yeah, that one I think has a really nice look. Not the 0.95, not the 1.2.
No, the old one.
1.0 specifically, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just curious.
I remember that I looked at the market at that point to see if I could get actually the 1.0, but there wasn't really anything that was available at that point. So, no, I never got to use that one.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious about what people... I love Leica, so this is what I'm going to ask you about. It totally makes sense. I mean,
that's okay.
I've ditched most of my Leica lenses for like exactly that same reason. I keep the system because it works for me in terms of shooting, but the lenses that I use are like all kinds of weird, Japanese LTM lenses that are obscure and hard to find.
Perfect.
And the Biogon, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yes, which Biogon?
The ZEISS 35 2.8 C Biogon.
That one that I also had. Yeah, love that.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. That was, I sold that early on, and that was really the one lens that I really regretted selling, despite I didn't really use 35 millimeter. So it made sense to sell it, but I really liked it. And if you had given me the chance to probably say, if it wasn't for 50 millimeter, that I could get one back, then that would be the Biogon.
Yeah. Yeah. You're speaking my language.
Yeah, it's everything that Leica couldn't do. There's just something about it.
Yes, it's just gorgeous. Oh my god. Yeah. Can we gush about this lens just for 2 seconds?
Again.
Again. It's my favorite. I love 35 millimeter. It just has a look to it. It's sharp. It has like a 3D rendering that's just like mind blowing. And you're right. Like I have a 35 Summicron as well, and the Biogon just blows it out of the water. Yeah. I think you should get one and get another one. It's so good. You should mount it on like a GFX and see what it looks like.
What it looks like. Now, it was funny. I had the size first, and then I thought, that's 2.8. And though I loved the look, I sold it and got the Summilux 1.4, 35 millimeter. I regretted it. I'm probably one of those stupid people. I don't think you will find many people that say they regretted to get a Summilux instead of a size Biogon, but I definitely did.
Oh, no, totally. The Biogon is far better.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, on that note of Biogon love, I think we need to start to draw things to a close now. Isabel, I've really enjoyed having you on today. It's been a laugh.
I agree. I enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah.
And my pulse is also down again.
Your what, sorry?
My pulse is also down again.
Oh, right. you've calmed down. You've got used to it now. Yeah, that's it. You're not scared of being on the show anymore. That's great. And then if anybody else out there that's feeling like too scared to come on the program, then perhaps you can. Perhaps you'll feel a bit better now because we don't bite. So yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do now? Let's do some last minute housekeeping and shout outs. So Perry, have you got any shout outs this week?
Nope, no shout outs from me.
Okay.
But I guess a shout out to you guys for keeping me entertained for the next 2 weeks while I'm on the road.
well, we might well do the same thing as we used to do with KARL. Because whenever he disappeared, we'd sometimes pick up topics that we knew that he wanted to contribute on. and he'd have a go. I wanted to talk about that. Well, you should have been here, shouldn't you?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
you're gonna do a whole episode on the ZEISS Biogon?
Yeah. Maybe not. We have enough material already. We could just splice together everything you've said in the past, I suppose. All right then, Johnny, have you got any shout outs this week?
I don't think so. I don't have any. I didn't take any notes to write them down on little business cards and put them in my pocket this week, so I don't have any to read from.
Oh, actually, you do have one to read because I've sent one through to you on your email from.
Oh, have you?
From Bob Matter.
Oh, yeah, okay. Bob Matter's email. Hold on a second. I did see that.
While John is looking for that, we've got quite a few emails that we've not actually done over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that next week. But we're going to read Bob's out now because it's timely. So it's best to do this one.
Oh, right. Yeah, let me yes. Actually, it is funny you mentioned this because I did have a chat with Bob in person about this. So, yes, this is very timely indeed. Subject: iconic photography exhibit at AIC through August 4th, 2019. And that would be the Art Institute of Chicago. So this is something special for the locals. Johnny, if this is not too late for today's podcast, please announce the iconic photography exhibit currently at the Art Institute of Chicago through August 4th. Several iconic photographers are on display from the likes of Gary Winogrand, Paul Strand, Edward Weston, Robert Frank, Burning Sabbath, and many others. Be like KARL, Bob Matter. So, yeah, that's a great thanks for the heads up again, Bob. And anybody who's local here in Chicago or anybody who's passing through Chicago, you'll want to check out that over at the Art Institute of Chicago, which is conveniently just a block away from Central Camera Company. So you could stop by and say hello and then go see the exhibit.
That sounds like an awesome show.
Yeah, this should be great. They have an amazing photography collection at the Art Institute of Chicago. They were one of the early art museums that really sort of recognized photography as an art form and collected it early on, because I mean that was a controversial subject up until probably the late 60s. Even is photography even an art form? So the Art Institute of Chicago has a fantastic collection. They also have, for people who have never been there, they have basically a, call it like a reading room, but it's the photography collection has essentially a library where you can go and they will pull out original prints, amazing prints for you to look at. You just have to make an appointment and go in there, and they will. I mean, it's incredible. You can go pull some Ansel Adams prints out, etc., and they'll get them out for you. So it's an amazing resource for people who haven't been there, and highly recommend that people check it out.
Okay, and Isabel, have you got any shout outs? Do you want to say hello to anybody?
Nope, except for thanks to everyone, and especially to you guys for having me here.
Okay. Well, I don't think I've got any shout-outs, although I will mention that if you're in the North Staffordshire area, South Cheshire, and Stoke-on-Trent in the UK, every Tuesday night we have a darkroom evening at the Six Towns. We call it the Six Towns Darkroom. If anybody's interested in coming along to that, then just drop me a message on, whether it be on email to the podcast or Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all those places. So if you're interested, let me know. More people are coming along. We have 5 people for the last 2 weeks, which is good. And I think we've got some more people coming along.
Nice.
So that's grown, and that's, in fact, actually it's a point where we would almost be slightly worried if more people did come along, because we're still completely amateurs about what we do each week. In fact, to the point where we're deciding what we're going to do almost when we get there. But every week we do developing, we sometimes do a bit of printing and just messing about, frankly. So it's good fun. Okay, coffee donations. We've had a donation this week, and I should have put this to Isabel for pronunciation help, but it's from Christoph. I'm going to say Siegelin. In fact, I'm going to spell it to you, Isabel, and that's SIEGELIN.
Yes. Oh, I can't do that like that.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I'm going to go with Siegelin. I'm going to go with that. Christoph Siegelin. And he said there, a big thank you for the most entertaining Chicago weather forecast there is out there. Thank you, Christoph. And if you want to help support the podcast, if you go to ko-fi.com, that's ko-fi.com, and do a search for Classic Lenses Podcast, you'll find us. And if you want to drop us a donation, it will be very much appreciated. And that's how we're going to afford to buy the 40mm conical lens, which we will be sending to Perry for him to love and then lose in a future episode.
Yep.
Okay, so let's round things off again. Isabel, been brilliant having you on. It's been great fun. How can people take a look at your work? I've mentioned your website. I mean, please mention it again, and any other areas where people can see and keep up with the things that you do.
I think at the moment my website is probably the best starting point, as I've only just updated it and I'm still adding some galleries. Apart from that, Twitter is always a good place to chat.
That's good. And what's your Twitter handle?
That's just Isabel Curdes.
That's it. And
that's very easy. And there's actually also a link, I think. Yeah, there is a link that also works. I just checked from my website. You can go to all my social media, except for there's still Facebook on, which I'm not on anymore.
No. And we'll put links to Isabel's website and Twitter and all that kind of stuff in the show notes, which live in the classiclensespodcast.com, and that's where you can read the full show notes for this show. So brilliant to have you.
Thanks for having me.
It's been great fun. Perry, how can people keep up with you? Is it even possible?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Flickr at PERRYGE, and my website, which is the same URL.com, although I never really update it, so don't go there. The next 2 weeks, though, you will not be able to keep up with me because I will be looking at puffins and whales and catching cod and eating lobster on the east coast of Canada.
Oh,
all right.
Nice.
Awesome.
So, Johnny, how about you?
Oh, you can keep up with me on Instagram. I'm at Sisson Photography on Instagram. And you can chat with me in person at Central Camera Company in Chicago most days of the week, except for Sunday and Monday. And if you want to keep up with the program, obviously, the show, the podcast, you can do that at classiclensespodcast.com. You can send us an email at classiclensespodcast@gmail.com. And please do on Instagram follow Best Vintage Lens. They're our Instagram partner. So you can see what's going on over there, and you can read the show notes for the program podcast show over there on Best Vintage Lens as well.
I think we need to put a specific shout out there for Ricardo Bayon.
Yes, we do.
I mean, we mention it every time, but his work on producing his version of the show notes is fantastic, and the one that he's just done is actually combined two together. He's apologised to everybody. No need to do that. It's and yeah, it's great stuff. It sort of cuts right to the chase.
We should just call him our Instagram frenemy, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. There's. I'm just trying to think of the right way of looking at it, really. But things are done with love, and then it cuts straight into it.
Right.
So keep it up, Ricardo. It's brilliant to read.
And it's a novel this week after our marathon CY episode last week.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Okay, so that's just about it. You can find the three of us in our Facebook group, our dedicated Facebook group to the podcast, which is the Classic Lenses Podcast Facebook group. We're also very active in photography with classic lenses as well. And the difference being between the two is if it's something that's podcast related, drop it into the podcast group, and then but if it's anything just to do with classic lenses in general, then bang it into classic lenses. So that's it. Places where people can find me. I'm on Instagram as Simon4. No, I'm not. That's my Twitter handle. So Twitter is Simon4. Instagram, I'm on as Simon Forster Photographic. My website is Simon Forster Photographic as well, where you can buy FICAS adapters while I've still got them. Also, it's Fozzie eBay page on ebay.co.uk. That's where I've got most stuff. I've got actually plenty of lenses on there at the moment, so you might want to.
And sometimes he'll send you the right one, even.
Yes. I thought I was going to be on a bit of a downer in this podcast, because I was just sitting here and looking across at a lens that I thought I'd actually just posted to somebody, and I've actually posted the wrong lens, which is not good because it's gone to Ireland.
Bloody English bastards!
No, I'm sure he's a very nice man, and he's very happy with his English. And he could be a very nice man and not be happy with his English as well, for that matter. I don't think being a nice man really makes you be one or the other, does it?
Not really.
No. All options all opinions can be legitimate. Where were we? We're trying to go home, weren't we? Okay, so let's finish the podcast. Our music is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. It's called Octo Blues. So I hope you've enjoyed this week's show, and if you can, be like KARL.